Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into a really fascinating text. It might just shift how you think about, well, your spiritual journey and maybe even personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
Our source material for this deep dive is a profound little book called U-Turn. It's by Fra Ajahn Thoon Khippapanno, and it's actually a transcription of a Dhamma conversation from back in 2000.
Yeah, that's right.
So our mission today really is to pull out the most crucial insights from this unique text, especially for anyone out there who feels like, they're on a path, but maybe hitting some confusion or just not seeing the kind of progress they hope for.
Right.
The preface of this book asks a pretty fundamental question, actually. It asks, are you courageous enough to make a U-turn if your current path, well, if it's leading nowhere?
It's such a vital question. And Longpo Thoon, the teacher, whose words these are, he was really concerned about practitioners being told maybe just don't think or stop thinking.
Mm-hmm.
He believed that if people were given the right guidelines, many more could really get Dhamma. Because the earnest desire to practice, it's definitely there.
Yeah.
So this text, it aims to give those exact guidelines.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this then. It sounds like it promises maybe a kind of shortcut to clarity, and it even hints the path might not be quite as hard as we sometimes make it out to be. So where do we even start to really grasp this U-turn idea in practice?
Well, Longpo Thoon, he immediately zooms in on a term most people think they know, samadhi, concentration.
Right, samadhi.
But what he clarifies is, while most people hear samadhi and just think calm concentration.
Yeah, that's the usual understanding.
Exactly. But the text shows two meanings. There's samadhi as unwavering determination, like a real focus, and then there's samadhi as calm concentration. And the big point is, the vast majority of practitioners today, they almost exclusively focus on samadhi just as calm.
Huh. So just thinking about that for a second, maybe you, listening, are sort of unknowingly just chasing calm for its own sake, rather than cultivating that determined focus for, real insight.
Could be.
That distinction alone could be a U-turn, couldn't it?
Oh.
And speaking of distinctions, the text brings up two types of liberation. Siddha Vimutti, liberation of mind, and Panya Vimutti, liberation by wisdom. What's the deal there? Especially back at the Buddha's time.
Yeah, this is pretty eye-opening. The text says that in the Buddha's era, something like 80% of arahants, the fully liberated ones, were Panya Vimutti types.
80%?
Yeah. Meaning they got liberated primarily through wisdom. Far fewer were Citta Vimutti, liberated through those deep states of mind.
Okay.
The Citta Vimutti practitioners, the text explains, they had this history, like across many lifetimes, of practicing jhana, these deep absorption states. They got incredibly good at tranquil meditation. So in their current life, they actually found it hard to just switch over to wisdom practice directly. It wasn't their trained pathway, if that makes sense. They were used to something else.
And just to clarify, when we say jhana, we mean those different levels of deep meditation, like the rupa jhana, the form jhanas, and then the arupa jhana, the formless ones like infinite space, infinite consciousness, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Those profound states where the mind goes beyond form.
But, and this seems key, the text says the problem with just relying on calm samadhi is that it's like, well, rowing a boat in a pond.
That's the analogy, yeah.
You might feel happy, peaceful for a bit.
Sure, temporary happiness.
But no real forward movement, no breakthrough, just going round and round.
Precisely. And if you link that to the bigger story, even the Buddha himself, he was obviously packed with wisdom potential, but he practiced deep, calm samadhi to an incredible level.
We mastered it, right?
Totally. But he found his wisdom was completely blocked. It just wouldn't arise. He realized that only practicing samadhi that way, well, it wasn't the path to ditching defilements or craving, not the path to liberation.
So that's why he left his teachers, Alara and Udaka.
Exactly. He had to find a totally new way.
Okay, so what does this actually mean for how we see these traditional practices? It kind of challenges the idea that calm samadhi is, specifically Buddhist, doesn't it?
It does. The text points out it's actually a universal practice.
Universal.
Yeah, like ascetics in the Himalayas might do it without even knowing any Buddhist precepts. It's a general human thing. But, crucially, it's not the path that frees you from suffering.
Right. Not the specific path to liberation.
Which brings us to that really pivotal moment for the Buddha at the Naranyara River.
The Golden Bowl story.
Exactly. He makes this vow, and the Golden Bowl, totally unexpectedly, floats against the current. And that was his huge aha moment. He instantly got it. His mind had always just flowed along with the worldly current. That's why he kept getting reborn lifetime after lifetime.
Okay. Flowing with the stream of normal existence.
Right. And this realization, that was the birth of going against the flow of the world,
Yeah.
using truth as the guide. It was the very beginning of Vipassana, insight meditation.
Vipassana. So that's the unique Buddhist part.
Yeah.
Not the calm itself.
That's it. Unlike calm samadhi, which you find everywhere, Vipassana is truly unique to Buddhism.
You mentioned earlier this analogy, the knife that cuts through. Is that Vipassana?
Exactly. The text uses that powerful image. Vipassana is literally the knife that cuts through the whole cycle of rebirth. It hammers home the idea that deep calm samadhi alone, it just can't support wisdom. In fact, it says a mind in deep calm is like being asleep. It can't really do the work of insight. It has to first emerge to determine samadhi, that focused, active concentration before wisdom can actually be applied effectively.
That is a really crucial shift. Okay. But this idea, the mind in deep calm being like asleep, that raises a question. Sometimes when people get really deeply concentrated, they have experiences, right? Like seeing things, hearing things, special knowledges. How does the text deal with those? Are they wisdom?
Yeah, that's where things can get really confusing for people.
I bet.
When the mind is super concentrated, sure, things can arise. The divine eye, the divine ear, things like that. And many people mistake these for real wisdom insights.
But they're not.
According to this text, no. They're just ordinary knowledges that come from concentration. Not the kind of wisdom that cuts through defilements. It even calls them a double-edged sword.
Why double-edged?
Because if you misunderstand them, they can actually make your attachment stronger.
Yeah.
Attachment to self, pride, oh, look what I can do.
I see. It becomes another form of ego.
Exactly. And this also helps explain that common frustration for the Panya Vimutti types, the wisdom-inclined folks.
Right, the 80%.
Yeah. When they try to force themselves into deep calm, they often just get more agitated. Their minds want to think, to analyze, to discern. And just repeating a mantra constantly, it might quiet things down for a moment, but it's not effective for their temperament long term.
Because their minds naturally want to investigate.
Precisely. They want to use thought skillfully.
So if just suppressing thoughts isn't the answer, especially for those people, what is the text's approach? How do you handle all that mental chatter, the restlessness?
It introduces this really interesting concept, calls it mental proliferation. Basically, thought running wild without discipline.
It's like the mind just spinning its wheels.
Yeah, exactly. Generating endless stuff, often totally unhelpful. Just restlessness without real purpose. And the solution isn't stop thinking. It's actually to use skillful thinking to correct the unskillful thinking.
Oh.
Like removing a thorn with another thorn is the analogy used, the core method. Consistently seeing anicca, impermanence, dukkha, suffering, unsatisfactoriness, and anatta, non-self, in everything, in all your experiences.
Using thought to see the nature of thought itself and everything else.
You got it. That's the skillful use.
And the text goes deeper into this proliferation idea, doesn't it? Different kinds.
It does. It talks about two types. Proliferation within Dhamma, like thinking about concepts, teachings, and proliferation within conditioned formations, just ordinary stuff, likes, dislikes, planning, worrying.
So even thinking about Dhamma can be unhelpful.
It can be, yeah, if it's just spinning without limits, if it's not actually directed towards insight, towards seeing those three characteristics, it can just become another form of restlessness. And obviously the other kind, thinking about worldly things, fabricating stories in your head, that's just scattering your energy.
Okay. Now, another key idea in the text is samuti. Convention. It uses this great analogy like a soccer ball. Two teams fighting for it. Defilements and wisdom.
Right.
Whichever team gets the ball wins. So if defilements control convention, they win. If wisdom controls it, wisdom wins. And this idea of a conventional self, this me and mine, that's the soccer ball.
Exactly. And if the defilements grab hold of that self-concept, they trick us into believing it's real, solid, permanent. And that leads straight to clinging, possessiveness, and suffering.
And the text says this is where the defilements actually hide in these conventions.
Precisely. They hide in plain sight, using conventional ideas to trick us. We cling to the body, which is just the four elements, conventionally named body. We cling to the mind, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness, conventionally called mind or me.
And other attachments too, presumably. Possessions, relationships.
All of it. All based on these conventional labels that defilements twist. And what's really striking here is samadhi alone can't break through these conventions.
I can't, even deep samadhi.
Nope. It can stabilize the mind, make it calm, sure, but it can't tear through the illusion itself. In fact, the text suggests samadhi can sometimes even protect these conventions
Protect them. How?
by wrapping them up in calm, making them feel solid. And okay, so they don't get examined. It uses this powerful analogy, like blocking the entrance to a cave versus blasting the cave open.
Okay.
Deep, calm samadhi just blocks the cave entrance, keeps the scary stuff hidden inside. But wisdom is like dynamite. It blasts the cave open, exposes the defilements, the greed, hatred, delusion hiding inside so you can actually see them and deal with them.
Wow, that's a strong image. Blocking versus blasting.
Yeah.
So just to be really clear then, samadhi isn't the enemy, but it's not the goal either.
Exactly. It's not the solution itself.
It's more like a power source. Yeah. A tool for wisdom.
Perfectly put. It's the power source for wisdom, not a substitute. The text uses other analogies too. Samadhi is like the gunpowder in a bullet. Wisdom is the bullet. Or samadhi is the bow. Wisdom is the arrow. It provides the force, the propulsion.
Got it. Launches wisdom into action.
Right. Which is why we need to differentiate sama samadhi right concentration from micha samadhi wrong concentration.
And wrong concentration comes from.
Fundamentally, the text says it stems from wrong view. Micha dihi.
Which brings us right back to the importance of view. The Buddha put right view, samadhi, first on the Noble Eightfold Path, didn't he?
Absolutely, for a very good reason. It's the entry point for wisdom.
So without right view, even your concentration might be off track.
It could be. Wrong view, the text says, that's the old path, the one we've been stuck on for countless lifetimes, just leading to more rebirth.
Endless cycle.
Yeah. But right view, that's the new path. The one the Buddha rediscovered over 2,500 years ago. And it's still here, still available, waiting for us to choose it.
The straight path. And the text gives us that simple reminder. The straight path, 1, 2, 3.
Anicca, dukkha, anatta.
Impermanence, suffering, unsatisfactoriness, non-self. It says contemplating these three correctly keeps you from straying. They govern everything, everywhere.
5 core realms, yeah.
And a really key practical point it makes. Start with your own body and mind. That's the first place to look. If you don't forget that base, you won't get lost exploring elsewhere.
Absolutely critical starting point. And this ties into another, maybe surprising, correction the text offers about the sequence of practice.
Oh, what's that?
Well, many people today are taught morality first, sila, then concentration, samadhi, then wisdom.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Sila, samadhi, panya.
Right, but the text points out if you look closely at the original Pali Canon, the sequence is actually taught differently. It's wisdom, panya first, then morality, sila, then samadhi.
Wisdom first.
Yes, because think about it. How can you truly practice morality effectively if you don't have the wisdom first to understand why? What is genuine morality? What's its purpose? Why is it beneficial?
Ah, so wisdom guides morality.
Exactly. Wisdom has to come first to see clearly, to understand the reasons. Then morality flows much more naturally from that understanding. The common modern sequence, it argues, is a later interpretation, and, well, it doesn't really work as effectively in practice.
That's a major reordering. Wisdom, then morality, then samadhi.
Yeah.
Okay, so practically speaking, how do we apply this? How do we train our minds if wisdom is the starting point?
Well, the good news is the text makes it sound quite doable. It says worldly wisdom already exists in us, right? We use it all the time to navigate life, solve problems.
Okay, yeah. We think, we analyze.
Exactly. But it's usually directed outwards, towards worldly stuff. So all you need to do, it suggests, is retrain this wisdom to look inward toward Dhamma. It uses the same pen analogy. You have this mental pen you use for thinking. You just need to use that same pen, those same thinking faculties, to see anicca, dukkha, anatta in your own experience instead of just, planning your shopping list or worrying about work.
So use the thinking mind, but point it differently.
Precisely. Turn it inward. Instead of letting that mental pen just scribble anxieties, consciously use it to ask, is this feeling permanent? Is it really me? Is clinging to it actually satisfying? That's the inward turn. Using the tools you already have.
That makes it feel much more accessible.
It does, but then there's also a warning, isn't there, from the Buddha himself in the Kalama Sutta.
Ah, yes. Don't just believe because it's in a book.
Exactly. Do not believe merely because it is written in a book or scripture. The text explains why this is so important. Originally, Dhamma was transmitted orally by arahants who knew it directly.
Right.
But over time, as it got written down, then summarized in commentaries, then explained in sub-commentaries, translated, layers of personal opinions and interpretations inevitably crept in.
Yeah, Human nature.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So that's why we need to investigate everything with reason and reality. Use our own wisdom to figure out what aligns with the core principles, what genuinely rings true as the Buddha's original teaching versus later additions or interpretations.
Which leads directly to the challenge of choosing a teacher, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so many interpretations out there.
Huge challenge. And the text uses another really vivid analogy here.
What's that?
It talks about a herd of cattle trying to cross a dangerous current. They're looking for a lead cow to follow. It stresses the crucial difference between a real lead cow, one who actually knows the safe way across, and a fake lead cow who just looks like a leader but doesn't know the way and leads the whole herd to disaster.
Oof. That's a stark image.
It is, and it's a reminder, the text implies, that just because someone wears robes or has a following doesn't automatically make them a reliable guide, a real lead cow.
So how do we tell? Did the Buddha give any pointers?
Thankfully, yes. The text mentions some concrete ways the Buddha taught us to recognize a true noble disciple in Ariya.
Like what?
Well, fundamentally, they possess a right view themselves. They consistently see things as impermanent, unsatisfactory, non-self. They've genuinely abandoned personal pride, clinging to rituals just for show, and other unwholesome behaviors.
Okay. What else?
Crucially, they don't lead people into superstition. They don't encourage blind belief in texts without personal investigation, and they don't promote worship based on craving, like praying for riches or magical blessings.
Right. They focus on the path, not on wishful thinking.
Exactly. So what true noble ones teach, according to this perspective, is understand suffering, understand its causes, and learn how to uproot those causes, using wisdom, morality, and samadhi together, and in that correct sequence we talked about. Wisdom first.
Wisdom, morality, samadhi.
Right. And they teach self-reflection, looking inwards, rather than encouraging people to chase external power, status, or wealth.
That really clarifies the qualities to look for, which I guess raises a big question as we wrap up. If the Buddha himself, the enlightened one, had to make a fundamental U-turn in his practice, if he had to abandon methods that were widely accepted, even by his own accomplished teachers, as the way to liberation, then what conventional wisdom, what accepted practices or beliefs in our own lives might be holding us back from true freedom, even things that seem spiritual or beneficial on the surface?
That's the question to really sit with, isn't it? Making that potential U-turn in our own understanding, especially putting wisdom and right view right at the start, it could really unlock progress we haven't seen before. Discernment becomes key, both in how we practice ourselves and, as we just discussed, in who we choose to listen to as guides. It's paramount.
Well, we hope this deep dive gives you plenty to reflect on, thinking about your own beliefs, your own approach, maybe in light of these really insightful, perhaps even challenging ideas from U-turn.